Hello, and welcome to my channel. Today, we are diving deep into something that affects every single interaction you have, whether it's at work, at school, on a date, or even in a casual chat with friends. The topic is the psychology of body language, what people really think. Now, you might be thinking, body language? Isn't that just crossing arms or making eye contact? But in reality, it's much, much deeper than that. Psychologists, neuroscientists, and communication experts have been studying nonverbal behavior for decades, and what they've discovered is fascinating. More than 60 to 70% of human communication is nonverbal. That means that when you're talking to someone, most of what they understand from you comes not from your words, but from how you carry yourself, how your voice sounds, and how your face moves. Albert Mehrabian, a well-known researcher in communication psychology, famously proposed the 7-38-55 rule. A 7% of meaning comes from words, a 38% from tone of voice, and 55% from body language. Now, this model is often misquoted or oversimplified, but it drives home the point. Your body often speaks louder than your mouth. In this video, we are going to break body language down scientifically and practically. The psychology behind facial expressions and what they reveal. The role of gestures and posture in shaping perception. How eye contact influences trust and persuasion. The fascinating connection between body language and emotions in the brain. Real-life examples, from job interviews to romantic encounters, that show how body language changes outcomes. And finally, how you can train yourself to read and use body language effectively. Stick with me until the end, because this is not just about spotting fake smiles or power poses. This is about understanding the hidden language of human behavior. And if you enjoy this, subscribe because we'll be doing a lot more deep dives into psychology and human behavior. Let's start with the science. Humans evolved to read body language long before we had spoken language. If you think about it, our ancestors had to quickly judge whether a stranger was friendly or hostile, whether an animal was about to attack, or whether someone in the tribe was sick or healthy. Our brains still carry that same survival instinct today. Neuroscience shows that the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for threat detection, reacts to facial expressions in less than 200 milliseconds. That means you subconsciously judge someone's emotional state before you even process their words. Paul Ekman, a famous psychologist, mapped out 7 universal facial expressions: happiness, sadness, fear, anger, surprise, disgust, and contempt. These are recognized across all cultures. So whether you're in New York, Tokyo, or a small village in the Amazon, a smile or a frown communicates the same basic message. But here's where it gets interesting. A genuine smile, known as the Duchenne smile, engages not only the mouth muscles but also the muscles around the eyes. Fake smiles don't. And micro-expressions, those tiny, split-second flashes of emotion, can reveal what someone is really feeling, even if they're trying to hide it. For example, a quick flash of fear before someone says, "I'm fine," might tell you otherwise. Think about this in your own life. Have you ever sensed that a friend was upset, even though they insisted they were okay? Chances are, you picked up on their micro-expressions, body tension, or tone of voice. Now, let's talk posture. The way you sit, stand, or walk communicates volumes about confidence, openness, and even dominance. Social psychologist Amy Cuddy became famous for her TED Talk on power posing, where expansive, open postures were linked to higher confidence and lower stress hormones like cortisol. Although later research showed mixed results on whether power poses chemically change your body, one thing is undeniable: posture changes perception. If you enter a room slouched, with your head down and arms crossed, people interpret you as insecure, closed off, or even unfriendly. On the other hand, standing tall with your chest open and making relaxed movements signals confidence and trustworthiness. There's also a cultural and evolutionary layer here. Expansive body language, like spreading out, putting your arm on the back of a chair, or leaning in, historically signaled dominance and strength. In contrast, making yourself small or avoiding eye contact signaled submission. In the workplace, for example, Leaders often use open and relaxed body language, while employees in lower positions often shrink or hunch unconsciously. Understanding this dynamic can help you project authority without even saying a word. When we speak, our words often come with gestures, hand movements, arm placements, little fidgets. These aren't random. Psychologists have found that gestures are an extension of thought. Research from David McNeil, a linguist and psychologist at the University of Chicago, shows that when people talk, gestures synchronize with their thought processes. In fact, if you restrict someone's ability to use their hands while explaining something complex, they actually struggle more. This tells us that gestures aren't just for communication, they're for thinking. Now, what do gestures reveal to others? Are open palm gestures. When you show your palms while speaking, it signals honesty and openness. This goes back to evolution. Open hands mean you're not hiding weapons. Pointing gestures. While pointing can emphasize a statement, too much pointing is often perceived as aggressive or domineering. Steepling fingers. That gesture where fingertips touch but palms are apart is often seen in leaders, judges, and professors. It projects confidence and authority. Fidgeting or restless movements. Rapid tapping, scratching, or shifting suggest nervousness, impatience, or insecurity. There's also a fascinating cultural angle. In Mediterranean cultures, gestures are frequent and dramatic. In contrast, in Japan, people may rely less on hand movements and more on tone and subtle facial cues. So reading gestures isn't universal. You always need to consider cultural context. Think about a job interview. If you sit with your arms crossed tightly across your chest, you might unintentionally communicate defensiveness or disinterest. But if your hands rest calmly on your lap with occasional open gestures, you're silently signaling, "I'm confident, approachable, and trustworthy." They say the eyes are the windows to the soul, and science actually backs this up. Eye contact is one of the most powerful nonverbal cues humans have. In a landmark study by psychologists Kellerman, Lewis, and Laird, 1989, pairs of strangers who gazed into each other's eyes for 2 minutes reported feeling significantly more attraction and closeness than pairs who avoided eye contact. This shows that eye contact doesn't just reflect emotion, it creates it. But here's the tricky part. Too little eye contact can suggest dishonesty, anxiety, or lack of confidence. Too much eye contact can feel intimidating, aggressive, or even creepy. The sweet spot is about 60 to 70% of the time during a conversation. There's also the pupil effect. Research has shown that people's pupils dilate when they're interested, excited, or emotionally engaged. Subconsciously, others notice this and may interpret dilated pupils as attraction or connection. Another layer here is cultural difference. In Western cultures, direct eye contact is associated with confidence and honesty. In some Asian or Middle Eastern cultures, however, prolonged eye contact with authority figures can be seen as disrespectful. So, what do people really think when you make eye contact? They think, do I trust this person? Do I feel comfortable? Do I feel seen? That's why salespeople, therapists, and even politicians are trained to master eye contact, because it builds instant psychological rapport. Now, here's where body language becomes really fascinating. Humans are natural mirrors. When you're talking with someone and you like them or feel connected, you unconsciously start to mirror their posture, gestures, and even speech rhythm. This is called the chameleon effect. Psychologists Chartrand and Barg, 1999, found that people who unconsciously mimic others' body language are perceived as more likable and empathetic. Why does this happen? Because of mirror neurons. Neuroscientists discovered these neurons in the 1990s, brain cells that fire both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing the same action. If you see someone smile, your mirror neurons activate as if you were smiling yourself, creating a subtle internal echo of their emotion. This is why yawns are contagious. This is why watching someone cry can bring tears to your eyes. This is why body language spreads in groups. Laughter in a room makes others laugh. Tension makes everyone stiffen. In everyday life, this means that when you're aware of body language, you can build stronger connections by consciously mirroring. subtly, not exaggeratedly. For example, or if your friend leans forward while telling a story, you can lean slightly forward too. Or if someone is speaking softly, lowering your tone can build rapport. Or if someone is anxious, staying calm and grounded can help stabilize their state. When people say, "We were on the same wavelength," what they often mean is that their body language and emotions were aligned through mirroring. One of the most underrated aspects of body language is posture. The way you carry yourself doesn't just influence how others see you, it actually changes what's happening inside your brain and body. Dr. Amy Cuddy, a social psychologist from Harvard, made this famous with her work on power poses. In her studies, she showed that adopting expansive, open postures, like standing tall with your chest open and arms wide, could temporarily increase testosterone, linked with confidence and dominance, and decrease cortisol, the stress hormone. In other words, your body can shape your mind. Now, her work has sparked debate. Some replications didn't show the same hormonal changes. But even critics agree on one thing: posture influences perception. People consistently rate individuals with upright, expansive postures as more confident, capable, and trustworthy. Think of Winston Churchill during wartime speeches: chest out, shoulders squared. Or athletes at the starting line: head high, stance firm. Their posture isn't just about physical readiness. It's a silent message that says, "I belong here. I'm ready." On the other hand, slouching forward, collapsing your shoulders, and keeping your head down communicates fatigue, insecurity, or submission. Even if you're brilliant, people may overlook you if your posture doesn't reflect presence. And here's the kicker: neuroscience shows that when you adjust your posture, your brain follows. Try sitting slouched for a moment. You'll probably feel more tired or unmotivated. Now straighten your back, roll your shoulders back, lift your chin slightly. Almost instantly, your mood and focus sharpen. That's not magic. That's the body-brain feedback loop in action. Psychologist Paul Ekman, one of the pioneers in studying facial expressions, discovered something fascinating. Humans show micro-expressions, flashes of genuine emotion that last less than half a second, and most people can't control them. Why does this matter? Because while we can fake a smile or suppress a frown, our real emotions leak through micro-expressions. For example, a person saying, "I'm fine," might flash a split-second grimace of sadness. As someone denying anger might briefly show a tightening jaw or narrowed eyes. Even professional poker players, trained to hide their feelings, often reveal tells in these micromoments. Ekman's research became so influential that intelligence agencies, like the FBI and TSA, trained agents to spot micro-expressions for detecting deception and hidden intent. For everyday life, this means if you learn to notice subtle expressions, you gain insight into what people are really feeling. Maybe a friend says they're not upset, but their fleeting frown says otherwise. Or maybe a business partner seems agreeable, but a micro-expression of contempt hints at resistance. This doesn't mean you should accuse people based on a micro-expression, but being aware of them adds another layer to understanding what people truly think. Let's look at how body language plays out in real-world, high-pressure scenarios. 1. Courtrooms. Studies show that jurors often form impressions of defendants not only from words, but posture, eye contact, and expressions. A defendant sitting slouched with crossed arms may appear guilty or untrustworthy, even if they're innocent. Meanwhile, calm eye contact and respectful posture can create a perception of honesty. 2. Negotiations. In business, subtle signals make or break deals. Research shows that negotiators who mirror their counterparts' gestures build trust faster and achieve better outcomes. On the flip side, if someone leans back, crosses arms, and avoids eye contact, it often signals resistance. Skilled negotiators read this instantly and adjust strategy. 3. Politics. Think of presidential debates. Analysts often score candidates not just on words but body language. Remember John F. Kennedy's calm, composed posture versus Richard Nixon's tense, sweaty demeanor in 1960? Television audiences overwhelmingly thought Kennedy won, proof that body language can sway millions. 4. Relationships. Body language determines whether people feel chemistry. Psychologists found that couples in sync, matching posture, gestures, and tone, report greater satisfaction. Even speed dating studies show that nonverbal synchrony predicts whether two people will want to meet again. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Body language isn't a universal language. It's shaped by culture. For example, a head nods. In most cultures, nodding means agreement. But in parts of Bulgaria and Greece, nodding can mean no, while shaking the head can mean yes. A personal space. Americans and Northern Europeans often keep larger personal bubbles. In contrast, Latin American and Middle Eastern cultures allow closer distance, and stepping back may signal discomfort or even rudeness. A touch. In Mediterranean cultures, touch is common. Handshakes, pats, even kisses on the cheek. In Japan, however, bowing replaces touch in formal settings. Eye contact. As mentioned earlier, in the West, it signals confidence. In some Asian cultures, prolonged eye contact with authority is disrespectful. What does this teach us? That body language only makes sense when you interpret it in context. A smile, a gesture, or even silence can mean different things depending on culture, personality, and situation. This is one of the most popular questions in psychology. Can you spot a liar through body language? The short answer: it's complicated. No single gesture or movement automatically means someone is lying. But clusters of behaviors, especially when paired with inconsistencies in their story, can raise red flags. Paul Ekman and his team found that deception often shows through small slips in body language or micro-expressions that contradict spoken words. For example, if a person says, "I'm confident about this deal," but their shoulders tense and their smile doesn't reach their eyes. As someone says they're not angry, but their fists clench under the table. Or a witness says they're calm, but their voice pitch rises, and they avoid steady eye contact. Common nonverbal signs associated with lying include a increased blinking or throat clearing due to stress, a touching the face, nose, or mouth, a overly rigid posture, trying to freeze their body to seem controlled, a delayed responses or overcompensating with too much detail. But here's the key: stress and anxiety don't always equal lying. Sometimes an innocent person under pressure shows the same signs. That's why experts emphasize baseline behavior. You need to know how someone normally behaves to spot meaningful deviations. For instance, if your friend usually gestures a lot but suddenly keeps their hands still while answering a sensitive question, that shift may signal discomfort. This is why even judges train to read patterns, not isolated signals. When we are stressed, our bodies betray us, even if we try to act calm. Stress activates the sympathetic nervous system, triggering fight or flight responses. This shows up in body language as a fidgeting with objects, pens, jewelry, phone, a shifting weight from foot to foot, a crossing and uncrossing legs, a shrinking posture, making yourself smaller, a rapid blinking or avoiding eye contact. One fascinating study from the University of Michigan found that students under exam stress displayed more self-soothing gestures, rubbing arms, massaging the back of the neck, or playing with hair. These gestures actually calm the nervous system, like a subconscious form of self-care. Think about someone giving a nervous presentation. Even if their words sound polished, their body may reveal anxiety, shaky hands, shallow breathing, tense shoulders. The audience unconsciously picks up on this, sometimes even feeling nervous themselves. This is why mastering your body language under stress can change outcomes. Public speaking coaches often train students to a plant feet firmly to avoid pacing, a breathe deeply to slow gestures, a use open hand movements to project calm confidence. By controlling your body, you actually calm your brain. Another example of the body-mind feedback loop. Now let's flip the script. How can you use body language intentionally to project confidence, warmth, and authenticity? Here are science-backed strategies. 1. Adopt an open posture. Keep shoulders back, arms relaxed at your sides or gently open. Avoid tightly crossed arms or hunching. 2. Use gestures wisely. Emphasize key points with hand movements, but don't overdo it. Keep them aligned with your words. 3. Make balanced eye contact. Aim for 60 to 70%. Look away occasionally so it feels natural, not like a staring contest. 4. Smile authentically. Genuine smiles activate the orbicularis oculi muscles around the eyes. Fake smiles only move the mouth. People notice the difference. 5. Mirror others subtly. If someone leans in, lean slightly too. This builds unconscious rapport. 6. Control fidgeting. Be aware of tapping feet, twirling hair, or clicking pens. Replace these with calm, intentional gestures. 7. Claim your space. Whether sitting or standing, avoid shrinking into yourself. Occupying space communicates presence and confidence. Practicing these habits doesn't just change how others see you, it rewires your brain to feel more confident. It's a skill that improves with awareness and repetition. To make this even more engaging, let's look at some fascinating real-world cases. A Bill Clinton's deposition, 1998, during the Monica Lewinsky scandal, body language experts analyzed Clinton's evasive glances, lip biting, and fidgeting when answering tough questions. Even before admissions were made, people sensed deception from his body language. At O.J. Simpson trial, analysts noted how Simpson's slouched posture and minimal eye contact during testimony projected disengagement, influencing public perception regardless of evidence. At corporate negotiations, a 2015 Harvard Business Review article detailed how negotiators who matched posture and gestures with their opponents had higher rates of deal success. Subtle mirroring made others feel heard and respected. In everyday life, think about a date. A person leaning forward, smiling warmly, and maintaining gentle eye contact communicates interest. Someone leaning back, arms crossed, and glancing around communicates boredom. No words needed. These examples remind us, body language is always sending messages, whether we intend it or not. Great leaders throughout history understood the silent power of body language. In fact, leadership presence is often less about words and more about how those words are delivered. Consider Martin Luther King Jr. during his "I Have a Dream" speech. His upright posture, open arm gestures, and calm but powerful stance amplified the emotional weight of his words. Now imagine if he had hunched shoulders, eyes cast down, and nervous gestures. The message would not have carried the same authority. Psychological studies back this up. Leaders who use open body language are perceived as more competent, trustworthy, and charismatic. Research from the University of California, Berkeley found that people naturally grant higher status to individuals who use expansive postures, spreading arms, taking up space, steady gaze, while shrinking postures signal lower status. This is also true in modern workplaces. A manager who slouches and avoids eye contact during meetings may struggle to gain respect, no matter how skilled they are. On the other hand, someone who sits upright, gestures with purpose, and makes steady eye contact commands attention, without saying a word. That's why leadership coaches often teach body language alongside strategy. Because influence isn't just about ideas, it's about presence. In today's world, a lot of our communication happens online. Video calls, texting, social media, these have changed how we read and express body language. On Zoom calls, subtle nonverbals matter even more. Eye contact is tricky because you're looking at the screen instead of the camera. But looking at the camera while speaking makes the other person feel more connected. And nodding and smiling a little more than usual helps overcome the flatness of digital interaction. A slouching off camera or multitasking communicates disinterest instantly. With texting and social media, we rely on emojis, GIFs, and punctuation as substitutes for facial expressions and gestures. For example, A can feel like hesitation or tension. A laughing emoji softens a blunt message. While it's not traditional body language, it functions as a digital extension of it. But there's also a cost. Psychologists warn that over-reliance on digital communication weakens our sensitivity to real-world nonverbal cues. That's why in-person interactions often feel richer and more satisfying. Our brains are wired to process tone, posture, gestures, micro-expressions, and touch, not just text on a screen. The takeaway: pay attention to your body language even online. Because whether on camera or in person, how you present yourself silently influences how people think of you. One of the most striking findings in psychology is that people form impressions in milliseconds. Research by psychologist Nalini Ambady showed that students could watch just a few seconds of a professor's body language and form impressions of their competence that matched semester-long evaluations. That means your handshake, your posture as you enter a room, your first smile. These moments carry disproportionate weight. And once formed, first impressions are hard to undo. So here's a practical tip. Enter a room with shoulders back, head lifted, and a calm smile. Or offer a handshake or culturally appropriate greeting that's firm but not crushing. And make eye contact in that first moment. These simple cues can shift the entire trajectory of how people see you. So, after all this, what does body language really tell us? It tells us that humans are always communicating. With words, yes, but also with posture, gestures, facial expressions, and even silence. It tells us that trust, connection, and leadership often depend on what we don't say. The science shows us. A posture shapes confidence. Gestures reveal thought. Eye contact builds or breaks trust. Micro-expressions leak truth. Mirroring creates empathy. A culture shapes interpretation. In other words, body language is not just about what people think of you. It's about how you think, feel, and connect with the world. So the next time you walk into a meeting, go on a date, or even just talk to a friend, remember, your body is speaking even when your mouth is silent. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this breakdown of the psychology of body language helpful and fascinating, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who would love to know these insights, and of course, hit that subscribe button. We are going to make many more deep dives into psychology, neuroscience, and human behavior. So if you want to truly understand what people think and how the mind works, you'll definitely want to stick around. Until next time, pay attention not just to the words people say, but to the stories their bodies are telling. See you in the next video.